Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us with the University of Richmond alumni. My name is Jamie. I graduated in 2019. I currently live in Washington, D.C., and tonight I'm going to be showing you how to do a painting of our beloved Richmond Lake and walking you through the different steps with the paint kits that you all were hopefully mailed. So we can start first by sketching just a rough outline of where we want our shapes to go. Don't worry if you mess up because we're going to be painting over it. I'm going to sit this way so that you can see my canvas as I go, and hopefully Emily will stop me if anything is unclear or if you have any questions. So let's do it. So first, you just want some rough shapes of trees on either side towards the top of the canvas. Again, really just a rough outline. We're going to go back over it. And then you also want the building line. I'm just going to do a quick line. Hopefully you can see it in this video. And then the bridge is the other kind of landmark that you want. So you kind of want to do a quick sweeping motion across the canvas so that it is pretty uniform throughout. You can put in the different pillars that hold up the bridge. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them across. Doesn't really matter. You just want them to be evenly spaced and coming down to an even place on the canvas to show where the water starts. So your sketch should look something like this. It doesn't look like much yet, but it definitely will once we start adding the paints. You can set it up in your handy dandy little easel. I will not be using the easel just because it's easier to show you when I don't. You should have a palette like this and your 6 different colors. We're actually not going to be using the green at all, so you can put that to the side. You want to put a lot of white. That's the color you will definitely be using the most. You can always squirt more paint out of the tube, but you can't put paint back into the tube once you've squirted it out. So it's okay to be a little bit conservative with the amount of paint you're putting onto your palette, especially if you are also wine drinking while doing this. It might take you a little bit longer, so the paints might dry up in between. So just, I would say about the size of a dime or a penny is the amount of paint you want to put in each pocket. And the empty one where the green would have gone, we can use for mixing. Okay. So my palette is fully set up. It looks like this, just a little bit of paint in each spot, and the middle one I'm going to use to mix my colors. So you should have a reference photo. I'll kind of show you this as I talk about it, but we're going to start with this bright yellow space and kind of work up into the sky. And then we're going to come down into the lake afterwards. The last things we do will be the ducks, the bridge, and sort of the stark skyline of the commons. So that we'll come back to. So we're going to start with this yellow. You're going to want to mix some pure yellow with some white. And this is really the focus point of the painting, and you want the viewer's eye drawn to it. So you're trying to keep your colors pure. It's really easy to get muddied colors, I discovered, with this kind of palette set. So get some water and make sure that you're keeping your brushes as clean as you can as you go along, and that will help to avoid some of the muddied colors that tend to happen when we are only using a few brushes. So we're going to start by loading up our medium-sized brush that comes in your kit with some yellow and some white. So you want to keep it pretty bright. Like I said, this is going to be the lightest point in the painting, which if you've taken any art classes, that's where your eye first focuses. So definitely a place where people are going to be looking when they see your painting. This is the shade of yellow that you want. So a lot of yellow, some white, and we're just going to slap it on right above this penciled in line that you've drawn and just sort of work our way across. And we're going to come back in and hit it with that bright pink. So don't be too particular about where you're actually getting the color. Okay, so next we're going to mix this pink color. You're gonna, you probably guessed it, use the red and the white to get that color. What I did was I mixed also kind of in between on the palette. So that's where I'm going to mix up my white. It's okay if a little bit of yellow gets in there too. So you're gonna want a nice light pink. You actually might want to add some yellow so that there's a blending effect from the yellow to the pink as you go through. And we're going to come in and paint sort of a stripe across using this pink. We're going to blend it into this corner over here. So right now, that you can see there's a pretty harsh line between the yellow and the pink. To get the effect to really make it look like a sunset and like the night sky, you want soft lines between your colors and you want a lot of nice blending. So the way to do that is to take a clean brush and preferably a dry one. Mine are all in the cup of water right now, so they're a little wet, but if you haven't used your other brushes yet, that will help. And just kind of go back and forth over this area where there's that rough line until the colors really nicely blend into one another. So you can see the difference there from what it was to what it is. And that's what we want to do throughout this sky. Because if you think about it, you know, looking at the night sky, there's nothing that really stands out unless you're looking at the sun or the moon. Also, this is kind of a trick that we use in painting is things that are in the background should not be sharp. So you want to blur those lines to make that part of the painting fall into the background instead of jumping out towards the foreground. You'll notice in this painting, some of the sharpest edges are the ducks and the bridge, and that's sort of, you know, conveying to the viewer that's what's in the foreground. We're going to take this pink sort of up and across. So I'm leaving a space to go in with purple for a cloud. You can also switch between brushes if you want. The big brush will also work here. Some of you may be sharing these painting kits, so the brush sizes, you know, not too important. Just mixing up more of this pink and bringing it again across the canvas. The next color we're going to mix up is going to be a blue purple color for these clouds. It's a lot easier to get darker than it is to get lighter. So I recommend starting with a small amount of blue and red, and you're going to need a lot of white to brighten it up. So just sort of a dab of your paintbrush to create a dark, it looks gray, and then you add some white to it and you start to see some purple. So I like to kind of play back and forth with the reds and the blue, you know, dip your paintbrush in each before adding it until you get your desired color. The clouds in this picture are definitely on the bluer side. So your purple is going to be a lot of blue with just a touch of red. So this is the color that I've mixed up right here. It's like a sky blue, almost purple. And I'm going to go into that empty space that I created to fill in the cloud here. And remember, we want to blend these edges. So we're going to come back with a smaller dry brush and kind of bury that hard edge so that the cloud really feels like it's a part of the rest of the sky. I also like to go in with some white. The white is going to definitely be a good blending color here. It also gives a cloud-like effect. You can see that the light of the sun is hitting the bottom of the cloud if it's a little bit lighter on the bottom. And as I'm reaching down, I'm just wiping my brush off on a paper towel. I like to keep clean brushes to, again, avoid muddying up my colors, because that's definitely a trap that you can very easily fall into. So I just got my brush a little wet. Sometimes that helps if, you know, the pink paint is a little bit drier and we just put on this wet blue. Some water on the brush can help to blur that edge. Sometimes I like to use my finger so that it's nice and smooth across and on the top as well. So you can already see how my colors are getting a little muddy at the top. I'm going to go back in with some pure pink to kind of brighten that up, but that's something to definitely be careful about as we go through. When you add too much water or too much white, it kind of makes your colors less saturated, less pure, which sometimes is the desired effect. But if you want to keep the brilliance of the sunset, try to keep your colors as clean as you can. We're going to take some of this blue up a bit too. So there's another cloud in the picture up at the top. I'm already running out of white paint on my palette. That'll show you how much we're actually going to use. You can even add a little touch of black into the colors that you're mixing. So I'm mixing up more of this blue. I put a touch of black in there, a little bit of red, till I get this nice blue gray. Don't want it to get too dark. And that's the final color that I'm working with. So we're going to add another cloud on top of this pink here. I'm using my small brush. You can use whichever. And then the very top of the canvas is actually going to be a yellow orange. So you want to leave a little bit of space at the top for that pure color to come in. So I'm going to, again, blend the edge of the blue and the pink between the bottom of that new cloud and the area of sky that we created at the beginning. A wet, clean brush is key here. You can really see what difference that makes blending the cloud into the sky. It makes it feel like a sunset. So the top of the canvas is going to be a yellow orange color. So you probably guessed it again. It's going to take some yellow and some red and some white. This is the color that I've ended up with. It's like a salmon. And the cool thing about painting is that there's no wrong answers. So your colors could look totally different from mine. Your painting may look totally different from mine, but that doesn't make it any better or worse. Everyone's just going to look unique, which is awesome. So we're going to paint this orange color across the top, and we're actually going to carry it over to the trees. And you want to paint well into the pencil outline that you've created. So I've sort of covered it. When we go back in with that dark color, some of this sky is going to be showing through. So you want to put down that base color so that it will show through when we come back later. So it doesn't matter how far down you get. We're going to cover it up with the dark colors afterwards. You just want to kind of get down past the outline so that your sky will show through. And you also want to blend the lines, you know, with the clouds that we've already created. So you can see here, there's kind of a rough ending from this blue into this orange. I'm going to blend that with my clean wet brush. And I'm going to blend that top line again. So you can see how when I'm blending, I have orange on my brush, so it's blending orange into blue. If you feel like it's blending too much orange into blue, just load your brush back up with that blue, and you can blend blue into orange. So this side of the canvas is sort of a gray purple, so it's a lot of white. So I'm going to add some more white paint to my palette, definitely blowing through it. So we're going to create this light purple for the top left corner of the canvas. I'm going to use my big brush. It's kind of a big area that we're covering. This color that you're creating is going to be mostly white, so definitely be sparing with your other colors. I'm actually going to take my paintbrush into this blue-gray we created and kind of start a new pile with white and just a touch of that blue-gray. You can also add some water to your paint to make it more spreadable, but you don't want to add too much water because then it becomes thin and see-through on the canvas. So the color I just created is right here. Ooh, it almost looks white, but it has a touch of that gray in it. And you're going to blend that into what we have already on the panel. So you're going to come in, and again, we want to go into the tree line here so that when we come back and do the branches, they have some room to breathe. We go back and add our happy trees, like Bob Ross likes to say. I'm going to come in with this blue-gray, and it turns a little bit pinker here as we blend into the orange. So I'm doing a little bit of that pink color that we've already mixed up. And again, you want to make sure to blend your colors. So clean that brush, get it a little wet, and blur those lines. So you can see that I'm blending light into dark here, and you can really see when I move my brush. So I'm going to load it up with the dark again and kind of tease it back and forth until I get that desired blended effect. And then we're done with the first section of our painting. So we've got a nice sunset. Feel free to take your time. I'm kind of breezing through it for the sake of time, but feel free to pause the video and make sure that your lines are blended the way that you want them to look, and that your sky looks like a sky. I'll give you another frame of the reference photo so you can kind of see, what we're going for with this effect. This one I've created definitely looks a little different. It's a little bit darker, so I'll probably go back in with some white, lighten up some spots, but you just want to give the effect of a nice glowing Richmond sunset that we all know and love over the lake. And these colors will come back when we do the lake at the bottom, which is going to be actually the next section that we're going to move on to. So we're going to work from the bottom up here. So we're going to start with this blue color. It's just blue and white, so pretty easy. You do want to keep some pure blue. So it might be a good idea to mix somewhere other than this blue that we created, because this has a lot of other colors that kind of dilute the pure color. So some bright blue, a little bit of white. A little bit more white. This is the sky blue color, and you're going to start at the bottom here and kind of work your way. So this is also, you want it to be soft, even though it is in the foreground. You want to give the effect of that flat water that's reflecting the sky. So you don't want your edges to be sharp between colors here either. we're going to take this blue, and it's reflecting these clouds, so it's kind of a similar pattern. We're going to take it across. And we're going to go dark with the trees over here, so don't worry about these edges because we're going to go back and cover them up. It's actually kind of ironic. You're going to want to add some water when you're painting the water to make your colors go on smoothly. So I don't know if you can see the difference. This is my brush when it has some water. You don't get as much of those kind of scratchy lines that you get when you apply pure paint. So this will help you keep those brush strokes nice and smooth. And I should say that brush strokes are definitely important to conveying what you are trying to convey with the subject matter of your picture. So you'll notice with the sky, we did a lot of horizontal brush strokes to kind of preserve the integrity. If we did brush strokes up and down, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. So same with the water, you want to make sure your brush strokes are side to side, kind of in line with the water plane that you're actually painting. We're gonna add some pink now to blend into the blue. So clean that blue off your brush. And you're gonna have a lot more white than any other color in this mixture as well. So some white, a tiny bit of red to give it the pink, but you really want like a pastel pink. It's mainly white. And we're going to fill in the gaps from the blue. So pink is going to go here. And again, you want it to blend into the blue. So I'm going to clean my brush. The brush wasn't very clean, evidently. You can come back in with the blue and again, kind of tease back and forth between the white and pink until you get the blurred effect. Making sure to clean your brush. You can see how those colors now nicely blend into each other. There's no harsh lines. I like to use my hand as a painting rag. Part of the fun of painting is getting a little bit messy. So the blue kind of turns into a purple as we get closer to the bridge. So you guessed it, you can add a little bit of red to your blue. The sky blue that you mix up, just a tiny hint of red. Going back with more blue, a little bit more red, and a lot of white. So the color that you want is this like gray, purple, and more white. We're going to work this color up the canvas towards where the bridge is. I'm adding a little bit of water to my brush to make it spreadable. I'm gonna fill in here. Again, clean the brush, blur the edges, give it the effect of water. Nice and smooth, horizontal brush strokes. Wet into wet paint is the easiest to work with, so try not to let your paint dry in between. So there's a yellow highlight on this water, so you want to take a clean brush and create that yellow that we did in the sky, but add a little bit more white to it this time. So mine is really bright, as you can see in this pocket. We're going to add yellow, white, a little bit of pink. My brush is super dirty, so it's coming out as green, which is fine. So we're going to work from this bottom corner with our yellow and kind of up this line. So this is where the sun is hitting the water and reflecting the most. We're going to build it up to just under the bridge. So my color you can see is a little bit muddy. I'm going quickly. I'm going to come back in with some, clean brush and pure color afterwards to fix it up. But definitely take your time and clean your brushes to avoid getting those muddy colors. Pink can also help to blend the yellow into the blue. So if you want to take your pink color and work this yellow kind of outwards, think of it on a scale of light to dark, it goes yellow, pink, blue. So the pink is sort of that transition color that you need. Once you've put those color blocks onto the canvas, take a clean brush and blend your water. I'm almost out of white since painting this yesterday and today. So I'm going in with some white over the yellow. Blending it outwards. And we have the water reflecting the sunset that we painted before. We're going to come back into the top where there's sort of a fogginess around the bridge. But first, we're going to paint the shadows of the trees down here. Or I guess the reflections is a better word. So this color, although, it might just look like black, it actually has a lot of blue and a lot of white and a little bit of black. So the black in this painting kit is pretty strong. So we're going to start out with mixing blue and white and just add black little by little to get the desired color. So I've mixed up this sky blue, putting in a little bit of black, and you can see how just that little bit of black turned the color completely different. So we want to be sparing with that. So this is where your brush strokes again are going to matter. So you can see in this reference photo, there's a little bit of a rough edge between where the tree is and where the water is, and that's intentional. So you don't want that same blended edge that has made the water fall into the background. You want sort of this rough brush stroke here. So we're just going to work from the bottom up. It gets darker as you go down. So we're going to start with this more close to blue at the top and work down to more black. It's kind of the same on both sides. We're going to start up here, and it's almost the color of the water, just a little bit darker. Doesn't need to be perfect in shape. You just want to convey that it's a tree. I'm going to add more black to my brush as I move downwards. The tiniest bit of black really changes your color here. It's okay to go back and add more white and more blue if you added too much black, like I did. And I'm going to work it down towards all the way to the bottom of the canvas. And you're going to cover up some of that beautiful water that you created. Sadly, it was made to be destroyed, but it will still shine through. So again, my edges are a little bit rough here. It's not a uniform shape, so sometimes there are tree branches that poke out a little bit farther than the rest of the reflection. You want it to look organic. Something like this. Kind of pokes out a little bit further as we get closer to the bridge. There's a little bit of a darker spot down here, so I'm adding in some black, blending it in, working it down like so. And then we can do the other side. So same thing on the other side. Start with blue and white and then add touches of black to get the desired color. It's always easier to get darker than it is to get lighter, especially with this paint set. The black is especially strong, the white is kind of weak. We're going to work from the bottom up. These are organic brush strokes. It's okay if a little bit of the water shows through the branches. That's why we put them there. So kind of lighter as you get closer to the bridge, adding more blue and white as I go. I'm gonna have to refill both those colors on my palette. So it should look a little something like this. So again, you can make your tree shape however you want. If you're not satisfied with the way that it looks, take your time and go back and fix it. I'm just gonna keep moving for the sake of time. So hopefully this should give you the basics to create your own masterpiece. So now we're going to move up into the trees, the darker shadow here. So these, they're not pure black though. So if you look, these are almost the darkest things on the canvas, but they still have a lot of white and a lot of blue in them. So we're gonna, mix up that same combination of colors, but a little bit more black this time so that it does differentiate the real trees from the tree reflections in the picture. So this is probably the place that you can be most careless with your brush strokes. Does not really matter which direction you move in. You're just trying to block in this space. Once we get towards the edges, you want to be more smooth with it. So, the tree and the reflection of the tree, there's not a really distinctive line there, but you do want sort of an edge so you can kind of see, if you look closely, where the dark gets darker, and that serves as the line of the lake. You want to preserve that. But as you get up towards the branches, again, kind of rough brush strokes. And this is why we created the sky that goes into the tree outlines at the beginning here. So I don't know if you can see it on my palette, or on my canvas, there's still a little bit of pencil showing through where I originally drew in the tree line. That's where you want to go up to with your dark. You're going to paint over the sky, and the branches are kind of going to let that blue color of the sky on this side show through. So kind of rough branches to portray that it's a tree. You want to go all the way over. It's going to hit that yellow that you created. And you're going to kind of end it framing the bridge like that. So we're just going to do that to both sides. Again, preserving the line where the dark gets darker. You want to try to make it even with the other side. You know, the lake is pretty, you know, even. It's not like it goes higher on one side than the other, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but just approximate. Again, you're going to go up to where you originally drew that pencil line, and for me, it's kind of pretty much up to the top of the canvas. I'm going to make these trees. There's some branches that kind of poke off. And to make your paint go a little further, you can add some water to it. And round it off on this side too, like so. So we've pretty much covered the majority of the canvas at this point. The bridge is probably the trickiest part and requires the most careful brushstrokes. So we're first going to fill in the background colors, and then we're going to come back once that paint is dry with a clean small brush and some watered down paint to make those crisp edges of the bridge and to really pop it off the page. So for now, you're just going to take your medium or your large brush, and we're going to create another blue-gray combination color. So some blue, some white, a little bit of this darker color that we created before, tiny pop of red, maybe a little yellow, why not? A little bit of everything. Mix it all together. You want a lot of this color, so if you want to mix it up in that empty space in your palette, might be a good idea. Most blue than any other color here. White, some red. Until you get a nice smoky gray. You can add more white or more blue to vary the color on the canvas. So we're going to blend this into the lake that we created, and we're going to actually paint kind of like right over your lines of your bridge. As you get closer to the bridge, you're going to add more white to this color. So it's kind of a foggy day at the University of Richmond. There is clouds rising up off the lake. That's what we're trying to portray in this image. I'm adding some white to the color, and you're going to paint right over those lines and right up to the arch with this lighter, smoky blue-gray color. And it doesn't have to be a perfect line because we're going to come back and do that later, as I was saying. You do kind of want to blend it into this darkness. So right now I have hard edges that go into the darkness. You can see that it looks a little, you know, funky there. So I'm going to take some of that darker color since mine has dried up on my canvas. I'm going to reintroduce it. Wet into wet paint is the easiest way to blend. So take some dark, kind of play with the back and forth with this lighter color until your edge is not so sharp. Clean brush, a little bit of water, and blend it. So to look a little something like that. You can also blend the line that you just created on the water of this smoky color into the existing field that we already had. So again, clean brush, blur those lines. Definitely want to give it the effect of smoke and water, which is just subtle. So there we go. The next thing we're going to add is the silhouette of the Commons building. And so this dark area here, it's the same combo of colors. So blue, black, and white. There's some trees, and then there's this very sharp line of the building. So this is where you do want to be careful with your brush strokes. Sometimes these little bristles will create an unwanted effect of kind of a scratchy line. A way to help remedy that is add a little bit of water to your paint so that it fills up all the bristles and that it's very viscous. And then just carefully, slowly draw the line with your paintbrush that way. So we're gonna fill in this gray color, just kind of blocking it in with the rough brush strokes to get that tree effect. And then we're gonna come back and put in the slick line for the skyline. So keep your brush loaded up. We're gonna use a dark gray. So mostly black and white. And again, just a little bit of black because it's really strong. And then a touch of blue to create that color. And you're just going to kind of pick up where you left off. That's too dark. Pick up where you left off with that smoke rising off the water, and go right into this area behind that is the buildings. So we're gonna set, like I said, we're gonna come back to do the bridge. So the line between the buildings and the smoke, it's okay to be rough. You don't want it to be too rough and too much space because you want that black line of the bridge to be able to come back in here. So it shouldn't be too thick of an area where you have this unblended roughness. So we're gonna do like a tree right towards the middle here. A happy tree. And then the rest is going to be some straight edged buildings. So I'm, like I said, going to add a splash of water to my paintbrush to give it an easy glide across the canvas to make those straight lines. So very carefully creating the top of the building. You can start with just a straight line across, probably the easiest way to do it. You can even go, through your tree. You do want it to be pretty dark, so almost black with, again, some white and some blue in there. And my bristles are doing exactly what I said they were going to do, kind of creating that not a sharp edge. So I'm going to add some more water to my brush to help with that. Give it a nice, smooth, crisp edge. So your building should really pop off from where the skyline is. And then once you've done that, you want to blend that lighter color up and fill in the gaps. So you don't want too harsh of an edge, too different of a color. You do want this color to be a little bit lighter than the tree so that it differentiates itself. And then work it all the way down to the line where the bridge will be. So at this point, you should not really have any white left on your canvas. So this is where you can add in the little like chimney that sticks up over the commons if you want to. I think it adds a nice effect to the painting. Again, use your smallest brush that you have. Load it up with some black and some water to make that little line. So you have your skyline kind of right where the yellow is. It just ticks up like that. Really easy. There's a few other little notches. You can vary the skyline a little bit. On this side, there's a building that kind of sticks up. We can bring that line across. Another little chimney. And so the white of your canvas should be covered. You should have a pretty clear lake. The last things that we're going to do is come back in and create the bridge and the ducks. We're going to do the ducks first because this is still a little bit wet and we want it to be dry when we work with it. So the ducks, this is probably the most technical part of the painting where it does matter what your shapes look like so that they're discernible. Use your smallest brush. Use pure black with water to get your brush to work with you instead of against you here. And you definitely want to go slow. So load up your brush with that black and with that water. You're going to come in to add the ducks at the top of this blue patch that we created. And you're just going to do a little upward tick for the head, a downward line for the neck, and the body is almost like an eyeball shape. So I'll show you when I do mine. It's definitely tricky. So I'm going to do it nice and slow. And then there's also the little bit of reflection from their head. So that too is a little tricky. I'll walk you through it. So uptick of the head. And then a little downward neckline. And then an eye-shaped body, a little flick of a tail. So your ducks, they can be, varied in size. It kind of depends on the perspective, but should look a little something like that. In mine, I have 3 ducks and they kind of get big to small. I think it looks nice, so I'm going to do 3 on this one too, but add as many or as few ducks as you want. This one's a little bit smaller. Super simple shape. Just the trickiest thing is controlling your brush. Okay. So once you've got your ducks in a row, we're going to paint the reflection, and it's really subtle. So you're going to take that same brush, the little one, and you're going to load it up with black and a little bit of white and some water. And you're just going to very, very gently create just the reflection of the duck's neck and head, if that makes sense. So in this reference photo, you can see that I've really only done tiny little brush strokes, and they're not as solid as the body of the ducks. So you kind of want to, almost flick your wrist a little to get that reflection with the brush strokes. And again, you want it to go side to side so that it portrays the water. So really gently, I'm just sort of going to lightly tap my brush. You can see that color is a little bit too light to kind of create this reflection effect of the neck. And then this duck has a little bit down by its tail too, to kind of give it that reflection. And you want it to mirror the duck itself. So I kind of messed up mine a little by putting the head backwards, but you want it to reflect the head. So we're going to do that for all 3 ducks. Kind of tap your brush down, little shape of the head, and then a little bit of a shadow on this guy. So there are ducks. And the last step is going to be this bridge. So same thing, you're going to load up your brush with black and water. You want the edge to be as smooth as you can. It's important to kind of do it in one sweeping motion, and then you can go back and add in and kind of fix it up. But if you go too piecewise across the bridge, it's not going to translate. So you really want that arch. And it's helpful to do it in one swoop. So black on my brush plus some water. We're going all the way across. And you can see that my line varies in thickness. So I'm going to go back and more diligently create that arc so that it's uniform throughout. Definitely a simplified version of the Richmond Bridge. And you do kind of want to fade the edges of the bridge into this dark side ground that you see. So you can use your finger, you can use your brush to kind of blend that part out so that it fades into the background. So once we have this basic bridge shape, the last thing that's left to do is to create the pillars. So we are going to just do down lines. There is sort of a triangle looking shape that connects the pillars to the body of the bridge. So you can see it's almost like a funnel looking shape. And then we're going to blend at the bottom of the pillars into this smoky water that we created. So you want a soft edge there. We're going to use the same blending technique that we've been doing the whole time. So again, I think there's like 8 spikes, but it doesn't really matter. As long as your pillars are evenly spaced across the bridge, that's all that's really important. So I'm going to start in the middle and work my way outwards. So kind of a triangle at the top here, and then straight line down. And it should look like that. We're going to do many of those as you want, around 8. If you can still see your pencil lines that we originally sketched, great. If not, no biggie, just kind of make it up as you go along. The important thing is that you want the pillars to all end at the same place on the lake. So to create, the line of where the land meets the water, and you want it to be in line with where we made that. Those lines in the beginning with the tree versus the tree reflection, you want these pillars to go to that same level. So you should have something like this. Mine are definitely not perfectly aligned. They're similar enough. And then the last step is just to, like I said, blend those bridge pillars into this smoky area of the water. So I'm going to go back in with my small brush, and I'm going to load it up with a little bit of that blue-gray color that we used for the smoke. Like I said before, wet into wet paint is the easiest to blend. So since that paint has dried on my canvas, I'm going to put some on my brush and just sort of gently tap upwards into the black of these pillars. And you can play with the back and forth of the black and the blue until you get a nice soft edge that you desire. There's also a little bit of a reflection of these bridge pillars. So if you wanted to do what we did with the ducks and kind of smudge across a little bit right underneath, give the effect of the water reflecting like that, so that it looks like, it's actually on a lake. So with that, you have finished your painting of the Richmond Lake. I'm definitely going to go back and fix some of the rough lines and edges, but hopefully yours looks a little bit like this, or it looks totally different and it's totally your own. But this is the reference photo. This is what we created. And Thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial.